The headlights cut through darkness as the car turned onto an unfamiliar road. Inside, Johnson shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Amma beside him, her face partially illuminated by the dashboard lights. The woman he'd spent months falling for through video calls and messages now seemed different somehow, distant. "Where exactly are we going?" Johnson asked, noticing how the buildings had given way to thick vegetation on both sides of the narrow road. "Just a special place I want to show you," Amma replied, her voice lacking the warmth that had characterized their digital relationship. "It's not far." Kwame, Amma's friend, who was driving, slowed the vehicle. The car's headlights revealed nothing but darkness ahead. Johnson's heartbeat quickened as the vehicle came to a complete stop. "Why are we stopping here?" Anxiety crept into his voice. The car doors behind him suddenly opened. Two masked figures emerged from the shadows. "What if the person you've fallen in love with online is plotting your murder?" This isn't some fictional horror movie premise. For 32-year-old Johnson, a promising entrepreneur from Lagos, Nigeria, it became his reality. After months of video calls, messages, and building what he believed was a genuine connection with Amma Mensah, a fashion designer from Ghana, Johnson made the fateful decision to travel across borders to meet her. He packed his bags with excitement, imagining the moment he'd finally embrace the woman whose smile had brightened his screen for months. Instead, he was walking into an elaborate trap, one that would cost him his life. The digital world has transformed how we build relationships, creating opportunities to connect with people we might never otherwise meet. But this convenience comes with dangers that lurk behind carefully curated profiles and practiced charm. Have you ever trusted someone you met online? How far would you go to meet them? For many of us, online connections have become normal, methodical and observant. Someone who absorbed information carefully before making decisions. Despite the chaotic pace of Lagos life, the notorious traffic jams, power outages, and economic pressures, Johnson maintained a structured routine. He attended local business networking events, saved diligently, and spent Sunday afternoons with his extended family in their ancestral home in Surulere. The challenges of living in Lagos had shaped him into someone who valued security and stability. He was a man who calculated risks, who believed that with proper planning, one could navigate even the most uncertain waters. This fundamental belief guided his personal and professional choices, until the day an unexpected message notification changed everything. Johnson's business, a digital marketing agency serving local businesses, represented years of careful planning and calculated risks. He had built it client by client, reinvesting profits and expanding services only when absolutely certain of success. His company occupied a small office space in Ikeja, where 3 employees helped small businesses establish online presences. This cautious approach to entrepreneurship mirrored his personality. Friends joked that Johnson was the human embodiment of risk assessment. He researched extensively before making decisions, whether purchasing a new laptop or choosing a vacation destination. "I'd rather be prepared than sorry," became his unofficial motto, repeated often enough that colleagues printed it on a mug for his birthday. This caution served him well in Nigeria's unpredictable business environment, where economic fluctuations could destroy unprepared ventures overnight. Yet beneath this careful exterior burned genuine ambition. Johnson dreamed of expanding his agency across West Africa, creating a network of offices that would help traditional businesses transition into the digital age. His cautiousness wasn't fear, it was strategy. He believed success came through preparation, not impulsive action. This balance between ambition and prudence defined Johnson's character, making the impulsive decision that ended his life all the more tragic in retrospect. Johnson's romantic history had been shaped by a series of short-lived relationships that followed a similar pattern. Initial enthusiasm fading into incompatibility. His focused nature often clashed with partners who found him too reserved or analytical. "You're always in your head," one ex-girlfriend had commented during their breakup. "You never just feel the moment." The demanding nature of building his business had further complicated his dating life. 12-hour workdays left little time for conventional social activities. Weekends became precious recovery periods rather than opportunities for meeting potential partners. When a college friend suggested online dating, Johnson initially dismissed the idea. The notion seemed artificial, even potentially dangerous. But as months passed with growing loneliness, the controlled environment of dating apps began to appeal to his methodical nature. Online platforms allowed him to connect with women outside his immediate social circle, beyond the networking events and family introductions that had yielded disappointing results. More importantly, they offered information up front: education, interests, relationship goals, allowing him to make informed decisions before emotional investment. The efficiency appealed to his business-oriented mind. The ability to build connection through conversation before meeting aligned perfectly with his thoughtful approach to relationships. Online dating wasn't just convenient. It was tailored for someone who processed the world through careful analysis rather than spontaneous encounters. Johnson maintained a tight-knit circle of confidants: 3 friends from university and 2 childhood neighbors who had become like brothers. This group functioned as his sounding board, offering perspectives that balanced his sometimes rigid thinking. His family structure was traditional and close. As the oldest son among 4 siblings, he carried both privilege and responsibility in Nigerian cultural terms. His parents, both educators, had instilled in him values of hard work, integrity, and community responsibility. Sunday family gatherings remained sacred in his schedule. These afternoons filled with his mother's jollof rice, siblings' laughter, and his father's pointed questions about business growth anchored him through difficult weeks. When Johnson began mentioning Amma during these gatherings, his younger sister Grace expressed the first concerns. "You're usually so careful about everything," she noted. "Why rush to meet someone you only know through a screen?" His father echoed these worries, while his mother remained hopeful about a potential daughter-in-law. These voices of caution would later haunt the family's grief. Warnings unheeded by a man who had always been defined by his prudence. Beyond his business ambitions, Johnson held personal dreams that revealed the depth of his character. He hoped to create a technology education center for underprivileged youth in Lagos, having recognized how digital skills had transformed his own opportunities. A notebook in his apartment contained detailed plans for this future foundation, curriculum outlines, potential corporate sponsors, and calculations for scholarship funds. This project represented his belief in lifting others while climbing. He spoke often about wanting to start a family by age 35, giving himself time to establish financial security first. Johnson envisioned a home filled with books, intellectual discussion, and the stability he valued so deeply. Travel figured prominently in his 5-year plan, not as a tourist, but as someone seeking business connections across Africa. He believed in the continent's potential and wanted his company to participate in what he called Africa's digital revolution. These aspirations revealed a man with vision beyond immediate gratification, someone building toward meaningful impact. The tragedy lies not just in a life ended, but in the potential contributions lost with it. Dreams that dissolved the moment he stepped into that car on a dark Ghanaian night. The notification appeared on Johnson's phone during a particularly tedious client meeting. "Amma likes your profile," accompanied by a photo of a woman with warm eyes and a confident smile, wearing vibrant Ankara fabric fashioned into a modern dress. According to her profile, Amma Mensah was a 28-year-old fashion designer from Accra, Ghana, who loved reading historical fiction, enjoyed early morning runs, and dreamed of launching her own international clothing line. Johnson typically swiped past profiles with international locations. The practicality of long-distance relationships seemed questionable. Yet something about Amma's detailed bio, which mentioned her Nigerian maternal grandmother and frequent business trips to Lagos, made him pause. Their proximity felt manageable, especially with his own business aspirations extending into Ghana. His first message was characteristically measured. A question about her design inspiration, referencing a fashion exhibition he'd recently attended. Her response came within hours, thoughtful, articulate, and ending with questions about his work. No generic pleasantries or vague compliments, but specific interest in his digital marketing strategies for African businesses. The conversation flowed with unexpected ease. She understood his entrepreneurial challenges, sharing similar experiences from her fashion business. When she mentioned struggling with online visibility for her boutique, their professional connection seemed almost serendipitous, his expertise aligning perfectly with her needs. That evening, Johnson spent 2 uncharacteristic hours scrolling through her social media accounts. Modest but consistent posts dating back 3 years, showcasing fashion designs, fabric selections, and occasional glimpses of Accra. Each post built a compelling portrait of the woman behind the dating profile, creating an illusion of transparency that would prove devastatingly effective. Their exchanges quickly moved from the dating platform to WhatsApp, where conversations expanded beyond brief messages to voice notes exchanged throughout the day. Ama's voice, melodic with a slight Ghanaian accent, became familiar, almost essential to Johnson's daily routine. The relationship progressed through predictable stages. Casual conversations evolved into personal revelations. Ama shared stories of losing her father at 13, of supporting her mother through illness, of fighting for recognition in Ghana's competitive fashion industry. These vulnerability narratives, whether authentic or manufactured, created emotional intimacy that bypassed rational assessment. Their conversations developed familiar patterns and inside jokes. Johnson found himself mentioning her in casual conversations with friends. Ama said something funny about that yesterday. Her perspective began influencing his decisions, from business strategies to weekend plans. Within 6 weeks, their good morning messages had transformed into good night calls. They discussed books they both read simultaneously, debated politics across their countries, and shared playlists that revealed their personalities through music. The digital connection created a powerful psychological bond, one that felt increasingly legitimate despite existing solely through screens and audio. For Johnson, whose analytical nature had often created emotional distance in previous relationships, this gradual deepening of connection through conversation rather than physical proximity felt authentic and meaningful. The very limitations of digital communication became its strength, allowing him to connect intellectually before emotionally. Their first video call lasted 3 hours, both awkward and exhilarating as digital personas gained physical dimension. Ama's apartment background featured fabric samples and design sketches, reinforcing her professional identity. Her mannerisms, touching her collarbone when thinking, gesturing expressively when passionate about a topic, became endearing characteristics Johnson anticipated in each call. These video interactions typically occurred in her studio, a space with natural lighting that showcased completed garments hanging in the background. Sometimes she would walk him through new designs, holding fabrics to the camera, asking his opinion on color combinations or embellishments. The consistency of her environment, the tangible evidence of her work, and her ability to answer spontaneous questions all contributed to a powerful perception of authenticity. Each call strengthened Johnson's confidence that Ama was exactly who she claimed to be, a dedicated fashion entrepreneur with genuine interest in him. The video calls created false verification, providing visual confirmation while concealing the elaborate deception being constructed around precisely what was visible on screen. 8 weeks into their relationship, Ama introduced Kwame during a video call, describing him as her cousin's husband and trusted business advisor. Kwame appeared briefly, offering a warm greeting and joking about having heard so much about the Nigerian businessman stealing Ama's attention. This calculated introduction served multiple purposes, adding perceived legitimacy through third-party validation, establishing Kwame as a trusted figure, and gathering information about Johnson's reactions and behaviors from a new perspective. Over subsequent weeks, other peripheral characters entered their digital world. Ama's business partner, Kofi, appeared during a call discussing export regulations. Her childhood friend, Abina, joined once while they were supposedly having dinner at Ama's apartment. Her mother called briefly during another conversation, speaking rapidly in Twi before Ama translated her greetings. Each interaction was brief but effective, creating a constellation of supporting characters that validated Ama's identity. These appearances were carefully choreographed, never long enough for in-depth questioning, yet sufficient to create an impression of Ama's social circle. Most significantly, these introductions normalized Kwame's presence. By the time travel plans materialized, Kwame's offer to collect Johnson from the bus station seemed natural and considerate, a gesture from someone already established as a trusted connection, rather than a stranger. This methodical construction of a fictional social network around Ama represents one of the most sophisticated aspects of the trap Johnson was entering. Despite his typically cautious nature, Johnson dismissed several warning signals that emerged throughout their digital relationship. When Ama's phone camera mysteriously malfunctioned during a tour of her supposed boutique, he accepted her explanation without question. When details about her childhood occasionally shifted, the neighborhood where she grew up changing in different telling, he attributed it to misunderstanding rather than deception. Her reluctance to connect on certain social media platforms was explained away as maintaining professional boundaries. When business trips coincidentally prevented video calls for days, he viewed it as evidence of her career dedication rather than potential manipulation of his expectations. Most tellingly, Amma consistently redirected conversations when Johnson suggested visiting her boutique personally or meeting her at public fashion events in Accra. These deflections were subtle, always providing plausible alternatives rather than outright refusals. Perhaps the most significant overlooked signal was his friend's uniform concern when he mentioned travel plans. Their objective perspective, uninfluenced by emotional attachment, recognized risks that Johnson's judgment, now compromised by genuine feelings, could no longer accurately assess. Modern romance scammers employ sophisticated psychological techniques refined through repeated application. Their methodology follows identifiable patterns that exploit fundamental human vulnerabilities. First, they select targets displaying specific traits, often people who reveal values of loyalty, financial stability, and emotional openness in their profiles. Johnson's emphasis on seeking meaningful connection rather than casual dating marked him as an ideal candidate. Second, they create mirroring identities, crafting personas that reflect the target's interests, values, and aspirations. Amma's supposed interest in Pan-African business development perfectly complemented Johnson's entrepreneurial goals. Third, they establish false trust through manufactured intimacy, sharing carefully crafted vulnerability narratives that invite reciprocal disclosure, creating emotional debt and perceived mutual understanding. Fourth, they validate their fictional identity through apparently verifiable details, social media histories, video environments, and third-party appearances designed to create a comprehensive illusion. The effectiveness of these techniques lies in their gradual application. Like the proverbial frog in slowly heating water, victims don't perceive danger because the temperature increases incrementally. Each small investment of trust makes subsequent, larger investments easier to justify, ultimately leading to decisions that would have seemed unthinkable at the outset. You're risking your life for someone you've never actually met, Emeka stated bluntly during their weekly football viewing at a local sports bar. The conversation had turned from the match to Johnson's announcement about his upcoming trip to Ghana. The response from his friends was immediate and unanimous, concern bordering on intervention. "How do you know she's not catfishing you?" Tund added, putting down his beer. "People create elaborate personas online. That boutique could be pulled from Google Images. Those friends could be paid actors." Johnson had anticipated resistance, but remained confident in his decision. "We video called almost daily for 3 months. I've seen her workplace, met her friends. This isn't some anonymous internet stranger." His sister Grace was perhaps the most direct. "This isn't like you, Colonel. You research for weeks before buying a phone, but you'll cross borders for a woman you've only seen through a screen." To each objection, Johnson offered seemingly rational counters. He highlighted the business potential, exploring the Ghanaian market firsthand while meeting Amma. He emphasized their intellectual connection and shared entrepreneurial mindsets. He pointed to Kwame's offer to meet him at the station as evidence of genuine hospitality. "I understand the concerns," he assured them, "but I've done my homework. We've discussed meeting in public places first. I'm staying at a registered guest house, not her apartment. I've shared her details with you all." What his friends recognized, and Johnson refused to acknowledge, was how uncharacteristic this behavior was for a man defined by caution. The rational justifications masked an emotional decision. For perhaps the first time in his adult life, Johnson was allowing hope to override his instinct for self-preservation. "Just video call us when you arrive," his friend Gabriel finally conceded, recognizing the futility of their warnings. "And keep sharing your location throughout the trip." Johnson agreed to these precautions, confident they would prove unnecessary. The warnings faded into background noise against the anticipation of finally meeting the woman who had become central to his daily thoughts. Preparation revealed Johnson's contradictory mindset, meticulous in logistics while overlooking fundamental safety considerations. He researched bus companies thoroughly, selecting one with the best safety record for the Lagos-Accra route. He created a detailed itinerary, sharing it with both family and Amma. His packing reflected his methodical nature. Climate-appropriate clothing organized in packing cubes, backup power banks for his devices, photocopies of his identification documents stored separately from originals. He exchanged Nigerian naira for Ghanaian cedis at favorable rates through a trusted bureau. He purchased a new outfit for their first meeting, a navy blue traditional agbada with subtle embroidery. He selected a gift for Amma, a a handcrafted leather notebook from a Lagos artisan, perfect for sketching design ideas. Most telling was his final preparation: transferring funds to multiple accounts and cards, ensuring financial flexibility while in Ghana. The businessman in him prepared for every contingency, except the possibility that the entire relationship might be fraudulent. The journey began before dawn, Johnson joining drowsy travelers at the chaotic Jibbawa bus terminal. The luxury bus proved basic: worn seats, fitful air conditioning, and a television blaring Nollywood movie at maximum volume. As Lagos gave way to smaller Nigerian towns, the landscape shifted between lush vegetation and stretches of red earth villages where children waved at passing vehicles. The bus stopped frequently, at police checkpoints for mechanical concerns and at roadside markets where passengers purchased provisions. The road conditions deteriorated beyond urban centers. Massive potholes sent passengers airborne from their seats. At certain sections, recent rains had transformed dirt shoulders into impassable mud, creating single-lane bottlenecks where drivers negotiated passage with aggressive honking and hand gestures. 17 hours stretched into 20 as delays mounted. Passengers shared food and stories, forming temporary community through shared discomfort. Throughout the journey, Johnson messaged Amma when network allowed, each response strengthening his resolve despite physical exhaustion and the increasingly vocal doubts filtering into his consciousness. The Nigeria-Ghana border at Semekrek embodied organized chaos. Passengers disembarked, joining crowds navigating a maze of officials, currency changers, and hawkers. Immigration officers examined documents with performative scrutiny, their questions less about security than creating opportunities for facilitation fees. "You're visiting a girlfriend?" The Nigerian official raised an eyebrow, holding Johnson's passport just out of reach. "Perhaps you'd like to move through more quickly?" The implied request for a bribe hung in the air until Johnson reluctantly pressed folded notes into the man's palm. The Ghanaian side presented similar challenges with different faces. Health officials demanded yellow fever certificates, scrutinizing Johnson's with exaggerated concern before suggesting a processing fee would resolve any issues. Fellow travelers shared knowing glances throughout this gauntlet of petty corruption. A woman returning to Accra advised Johnson, "Don't fight it. Budget for these unofficial taxes when traveling our roads." This wisdom, passed between experienced West African travelers, reflected a resignation to systems where official processes remained secondary to personal negotiations. Despite these frustrations, each stamp brought Johnson closer to Amma, transforming bureaucratic annoyances into milestones on his journey toward her. As the bus finally approached Accra, exhaustion gave way to mounting anticipation. Through the window, glimpses of the city's architecture, modern high-rises alongside colonial structures and traditional buildings, created a backdrop for his imagined reunion. His expectations had crystallized during the journey. He envisioned their meeting, perhaps awkward initially, but quickly warming as digital familiarity translated to physical presence. He imagined visiting her boutique, offering marketing suggestions, perhaps even discussing cross-border business collaboration. Beyond these practical aspects lay deeper hopes. Confirmation that their connection was as genuine in person as through screens. Validation that his intuition, choosing trust over skepticism, had been correct. Proof that meaningful connection could bridge geographical and cultural distances. These expectations formed a dangerous cocktail of hope and vulnerability. Despite his physical discomfort and the warnings echoing in his mind, Johnson arrived in Ghana emotionally open and psychologically primed to overlook inconsistencies that might threaten his carefully constructed narrative. As the bus pulled into Accra's crowded station, fatigue clouded his judgment precisely when clarity was most crucial. Scanning the crowds for Kwame's face, Johnson stood at the threshold between hope and catastrophe. We've reached a pivotal moment in Johnson's journey. His bus has arrived in Accra, and he's about to meet the people who will lead him into a deadly trap. The warning signs have been present throughout, but hope continues to override caution. If you're finding this story valuable, please take a moment to hit the like button. It helps more people discover these crucial safety lessons. I'm curious, have you ever ignored red flags in a relationship because you wanted so badly for it to be real? What warning signs do you think are most important when meeting someone from the internet? Share your thoughts in the comments below. As we continue with Johnson's story, we'll see exactly how the trap unfolds and identify the crucial moments where different choices might have saved his life. This next section contains disturbing details, but understanding these tactics could protect you or someone you care about from similar dangers. The crowded bus terminal pulsed with activity as Johnson stepped off the vehicle, legs stiff from the prolonged journey. Scanning the sea of faces, he spotted a man holding a paper with his name, Kwame, recognizable from their brief video introduction months earlier. "Welcome to Ghana, my brother." Kwame's handshake was firm, his smile seemingly genuine. Dressed in pressed slacks and a patterned shirt, he projected an image of respectable professionalism. "Ama is finalizing some work at the boutique. She's so excited to finally meet you." Kwame efficiently guided Johnson through the station, deftly navigating hawkers and taxi drivers competing for attention. His knowledge of the city and confident manner reinforced his supposed connection to Ama. He asked thoughtful questions about the journey, expressing appropriate concern about border difficulties. "Let me take your heaviest bag," he offered, shouldering Johnson's luggage with casual ease. "I've parked just around the corner." The car, a well-maintained Toyota sedan, matched the middle-class success story Ama had constructed. Clean interior, functioning air conditioning, nothing flashy but comfortable and respectable. As they drove through across streets, Kwame pointed out landmarks and neighborhoods, building a narrative of normalcy and legitimacy. "Ama has talked about you constantly," Kwame mentioned, maintaining eye contact through the rearview mirror. "It's good to finally put a face to the name." This carefully crafted first impression achieved its purpose, establishing Kwame as a trustworthy guide in unfamiliar territory. The guest house sat in a residential neighborhood, not downtown where tourists congregated, but not isolated enough to trigger alarm. A two-story building with a modest reception area led to a courtyard where potted plants surrounded plastic tables. The establishment projected affordable comfort rather than luxury. "Ama thought you might prefer this to a big hotel," Kwame explained. "More authentic Ghanaian hospitality. The owner is a family friend." The room itself was simple but adequate: clean linens, functioning air conditioning, secure locks on windows and doors. The walls featured local artwork, and a small refrigerator contained complimentary water bottles. Nothing suggested danger or deception. The guest house staff welcomed Johnson warmly, their friendliness reinforcing the impression of safety. The manager mentioned Ama by name. "Your girlfriend already paid your first night," cementing her existence beyond digital spaces. These deliberate choices, a local establishment with enough legitimacy to avoid suspicion but sufficient privacy for what would follow, revealed the calculated nature of the trap Johnson had entered. She appeared at the guest house courtyard just as Johnson finished freshening up. The moment crystallized months of anticipation. Ama stepping through the gate, wearing a yellow dress that complemented her complexion, her smile matching the one that had brightened his screen for months. Their embrace felt simultaneously familiar and strange. Her perfume, floral with subtle spice notes, added sensory dimension to a relationship previously limited to sight and sound. Her voice, when she spoke his name, carried the same warmth he'd grown accustomed to through calls. "I can't believe you're actually here," she said, her fingers intertwining with his. The physical connection, her hand in his, sealed the transition from digital to physical reality. The woman before him matched her photos and video calls perfectly. No discrepancies in appearance, no jarring differences in mannerisms or speech patterns. This perfect alignment, later revealed as deliberate construction, eliminated any lingering doubts. "I brought you something," Johnson said, presenting the leather notebook. Her delight seemed genuine as she traced the embossed patterns, commenting on Nigerian craftsmanship compared to Ghanaian techniques. This exchange of gifts and observations created a foundation of normalcy upon which the evening's deception would build. Dinner at the guest house courtyard unfolded with practiced perfection. Ama ordered traditional Ghanaian dishes, jollof rice, grilled tilapia, banku, explaining each with cultural context and personal anecdotes. She asked informed questions about his business, referencing previous conversations with accurate detail. Their conversation flowed naturally through shared topics: books they'd both read, political developments across West Africa, entrepreneurial challenges. When Kwame joined them briefly, the group dynamic shifted seamlessly, suggesting established relationships and comfortable familiarity. Ama touched Johnson's arm when emphasizing points, laughed at his jokes with apparent genuine appreciation, and maintained the consistent personality he'd come to know through screens. Her stories about the boutique included specific details, difficult clients, fabric supplier challenges, creating an impression of authentic daily business operations. Throughout these hours, every interaction reinforced the narrative Johnson wanted to believe, that he had found genuine connection across digital divide, that his journey represented the beginning of something meaningful rather than the end of everything. As evening progressed, almost imperceptible changes rippled through Ama's demeanor. Brief glances exchanged with Kwame carried coded communication. Her phone, previously ignored in favor of present conversation, suddenly required frequent attention. Questions about Johnson's family and business became more specific, asking about his banking arrangements, which family members knew his travel plans, how frequently he checked in with friends at home. These inquiries, disguised as deepening interest, served information-gathering purposes. Around 9 p.m., her energy shifted, a sudden urgency replacing relaxed engagement. "I want to show you something special," she announced, checking her watch. "A place better experienced at night." When Johnson mentioned fatigue from travel, suggesting they wait until morning, her response contained subtle manipulation. "I arranged this specifically for your arrival. The place closes early most nights." The pressure to comply, to avoid disappointing her or appearing ungrateful, overrode his physical exhaustion and instinctive hesitation. Her sudden insistence on leaving the public space of the guest house contradicted earlier agreement to keep their first meeting in populated areas. Most telling was her reaction when he suggested inviting another couple from the guest house who had mentioned visiting night markets. A flash of annoyance quickly masked by a rehearsed explanation about the private nature of her planned surprise. "There's a special place along the coast I want to show you," Ama said, her voice taking on a persuasive quality as she reached for Johnson's hand across the dinner table. "The view of Accra at night from there is absolutely magical. Not many tourists know about it." Johnson hesitated, exhaustion from the journey still heavy in his limbs. "Could we perhaps go tomorrow? I've been traveling for nearly 20 hours. Her expression shifted subtly, disappointment mixed with something harder to identify. "Tomorrow it will be crowded with locals. Tonight is perfect because it's quiet." She squeezed his hand. "I've been planning this welcome for weeks. Just a quick drive, then you can rest properly." Kwame, who had rejoined them for coffee, added weight to her suggestion. "It really is worth seeing, my friend. A proper Ghanaian welcome." Johnson found himself caught between politeness and physical fatigue. His instinct for self-preservation, typically so reliable, was muffled by the desire to please Ama and validate the connection they'd built. The thought of disappointing her on their first meeting seemed worse than pushing through his exhaustion. The guesthouse owner said visitors should be careful about unfamiliar areas at night, Johnson mentioned casually, testing their reaction. Ama laughed, the sound practiced and reassuring. "That's advice for tourists who don't have local guides. You're with us." She leaned closer. "Don't you trust me after all this time?" That simple question, framed as a test of their relationship, effectively silenced his remaining objections. His nod of agreement set in motion the final phase of their calculated plan. The journey began innocuously. Kwame drove while Ama sat beside Johnson in the back seat, her hand resting comfortably on his knee. They passed through illuminated sections of Accra, buildings decorated with bright signs, street vendors still conducting business under portable lamps, groups of young people gathered outside bars and restaurants. Johnson tried memorizing street names and landmarks, a habitual practice when visiting new cities. But as they continued driving, the urban density gradually thinned. Commercial districts gave way to residential areas, which in turn surrendered to stretches with minimal development. Streetlights became increasingly sparse. "How much further?" Johnson asked, noting they'd been driving for nearly 30 minutes. "Just past this next section," Ama replied, gesturing vaguely ahead. "The road gets a bit rough, but the destination is worth it." The car turned onto a narrow, unpaved road, vegetation scraping against the vehicle's sides. The headlights provided the only illumination now, cutting a narrow path through increasing darkness. The city sounds had faded completely, replaced by the rhythmic drone of nocturnal insects. Johnson's phone, which he checked discreetly, showed no service bars. The realization that he was effectively disconnected from any potential help registered as a dull warning, but he pushed the thought aside. The woman beside him, whose smile had brightened his days for months, wouldn't lead him into danger. Would she? The first genuine flicker of fear arrived when Kwame stopped responding to questions. Earlier casual conversation about Ghanaian landmarks had given way to tense silence. When Johnson asked about the area they were passing through, Kwame's eyes in the rearview mirror revealed nothing but flat concentration. Johnson's body responded before his mind fully processed the danger. His heartbeat accelerated. His palms dampened with sweat. The car's interior, previously comfortable, now felt confining. He shifted position, creating distance between himself and Amma, whose hand had withdrawn from his knee. "I think we should head back," he suggested, striving for a casual tone. "It's getting late, and I'm really feeling the journey now." Amma's response came a beat too slow. "We're almost there. Just 5 more minutes." The rehearsed quality of her response triggered memories of his friend's warnings. Each curve in the road took them further from safety, deeper into isolation. The car's speed had increased rather than slowed after his request to return. Johnson reached casually for his phone, planning to activate location sharing even without service. Amma's eyes tracked the movement. "No reception out here," she stated flatly. "The coastal location blocks signals." The technical explanation made no sense. Coastal areas typically had coverage, but the implication was clear. No calls for help would be possible. The realization crystallized too late. They were no longer driving toward a destination, but away from any possibility of assistance. The car halted abruptly on a stretch of road bounded by dense vegetation. The headlights illuminated nothing but untamed foliage and red earth. Kwame exited first, leaving the engine running. For a moment, silence hung in the air, a pocket of terrible anticipation. The back doors opened simultaneously. 2 masked men appeared, one on each side. Their movements were practiced, efficient. One yanked Johnson from the vehicle, while the other blocked any possibility of escape on the opposite side. "What is this?" "Amma." Johnson's voice broke as he called to her, still clinging to the possibility that this was some terrible misunderstanding. The figures forced him against the car's hood. Cold metal pressed against his back as they removed his watch, wallet, and phone with mechanical efficiency. One of them demanded bank card pins, while the other searched his pockets for additional valuables. Through shock and confusion, Johnson registered movement in his peripheral vision. Amma exiting the car calmly, her face illuminated briefly by the interior light. Her expression showed neither pleasure nor remorse, just detached observation of a plan unfolding exactly as designed. "Amma, please," Johnson pleaded, still struggling to reconcile the woman before him with the person he thought he knew. "Whatever they're paying you, I can." "This was never about money alone," she interrupted, her voice transformed. The warm tones replaced by clinical detachment. She approached, stopping just outside his reach. "Though we will empty your accounts before the night ends." The metamorphosis was complete. Her posture, mannerisms, even her facial expressions had altered. The woman who had shared vulnerable stories about her childhood, who had laughed at his jokes and discussed books with passionate intelligence, had vanished. In her place stood a calculated operator, watching his distress with analytical distance. "How many others?" Johnson asked, sudden clarity piercing his terror. "Enough to perfect the process," she replied, checking her watch with the same gesture he had once found endearing. "Nothing personal. Some targets require more elaborate preparation than others. You were particularly cautious during the early stages." The betrayal cut deeper than any physical threat. Every shared moment, every vulnerability he had exposed, every dream he had confided, all had been meticulously harvested for this outcome. The most intimate weapon was the trust he had freely given. What followed unfolded with methodical precision. When Johnson attempted resistance, a desperate lunge toward the road, the response was immediate and overwhelming. The larger masked man delivered a precise blow to his midsection, forcing him to his knees. Kwame, now wearing gloves, retrieved something from the car trunk. The attackers bound Johnson's hands with practiced movements. His pleas for mercy met vacant stares. Amma watched from several paces away, her attention divided between the scene and her phone, where she appeared to be checking the time. They moved him deeper into the vegetation, beyond the reach of the car's headlights. The darkness swallowed the group, concealing the specifics of what followed. The efficiency of their actions suggested a routine repeated many times before. In his final moments, Johnson thought not of his own fate but of his family. How they had warned him, how they would search for him, how they might never know the truth. His last clear thought centered on the cruel irony that his death would ultimately serve as a warning for others who might be spared his fate. The attackers left nothing to chance, removing evidence and ensuring the scene would remain undiscovered for days. When they returned to the vehicle, Alma was already seated inside, scrolling through Johnson's phone with methodical focus. I know this part of Johnson's story is difficult to hear. The calculated nature of the trap and the betrayal he experienced are truly horrifying. But understanding exactly how these criminals operate could save lives. If you're finding value in this breakdown of romance scam tactics, please hit the like button to help this information reach more people who might be vulnerable to similar schemes. I want to ask you, what safety protocols would you insist on before meeting someone from the internet? Would you recognize the warning signs that Johnson missed? Share your thoughts in the comments below. 3 days passed before anyone found Johnson. A group of farmers heading to their cassava fields noticed disturbed vegetation off the rural road. Curious about the unusual pattern, they ventured deeper into the brush. What they discovered prompted immediate calls to local authorities. The scene told a story of calculated violence. Johnson's body had been deliberately positioned to delay discovery, placed in a shallow depression and partially covered with branches and leaves. Despite these efforts, recent rainfall had shifted the makeshift concealment. Emmanuel Kwesi, the farmer who first spotted the disturbance, later described the moment to police. Something didn't look right about how the plants were bent. When we got closer, we saw his hand first. We knew immediately this wasn't an accident. The farmers maintained a respectful distance, disturbing nothing while waiting for authorities. Their quick action preserved crucial evidence that might otherwise have been compromised by weather or wildlife. The remote location had been carefully chosen, far enough from residential areas to ensure privacy during the crime, yet accessible by vehicle. This strategic selection suggested local knowledge and premeditation rather than opportunity. Most telling was what investigators didn't find. No wallet, no phone, no identification documents. The absence of personal effects pointed to robbery as a potential motive, but the elaborate disposal methods suggested something more complex than a simple theft gone wrong. The farmer's discovery set in motion an investigation that would eventually span 2 countries, involve multiple law enforcement agencies, and expose a criminal network that had operated with impunity for years. The Ghanaian police response revealed the challenges of investigating crimes in areas with limited resources. The first officers arrived nearly 2 hours after the farmer's call, hampered by the location's remoteness and poor road conditions. Detective Inspector Kofi Mensah, assigned to lead the investigation, faced immediate obstacles. The crime scene, exposed to elements for days, yielded limited physical evidence. No witnesses had reported suspicious activity in the area. The victim's identity remained unknown without documentation. We have a male victim, approximately 30 to 35 years old, no identification, Mensah noted in his initial report. Cause of death appears to be homicide, but we await medical examiner confirmation. The investigation's first breakthrough came from an unexpected source, the guest house where Johnson had stayed. When he failed to return or check out, the manager had logged his information in their security register, including a photocopy of his passport, standard procedure for international guests. This documentation provided crucial details: the victim's name, nationality, and passport number. More importantly, it established a timeline and connection to Ghana. The guest house staff remembered him dining with a woman and another man the evening of his disappearance. He seemed happy, excited to be meeting her, the receptionist recalled. She called herself Alma, said she was showing him around Accra. These initial witness statements gave investigators their first lead: a woman named Alma who had last been seen with the victim. The guest house's security camera, though basic, had captured grainy footage of Johnson leaving with a woman and man, the first visual evidence of his final hours. The notification came via international channels, Ghanaian authorities contacting Nigerian police, who dispatched officers to the Johnson family home in Lagos. The standard protocols of death notification did nothing to soften the devastating impact. Johnson's mother collapsed upon hearing the news, requiring medical attention. His father, a typically stoic man, aged visibly within moments. His siblings gathered, moving through shock toward the terrible realization that their warnings had proven tragically accurate. "We told him not to go," Grace repeated through tears. "He never took risks. Why did he take this one?" The family's grief transformed into determined action. They mobilized resources to transport Johnson's body home, navigating complex international procedures. They contacted media outlets in both countries, ensuring his case received attention. Most significantly, They provided investigators with crucial information about his online relationship with Alma. "He shared everything with me," Grace told Detective Mensah during a video call. "Her photos, their conversations, even recordings of their video calls. I have it all saved." This digital archive became instrumental to the investigation. The family's meticulous preservation of Johnson's communications, motivated by their initial suspicions, provided investigators with their first glimpse into the elaborate deception that had led him to Ghana. The Johnson family's grief became a powerful catalyst, transforming a potentially anonymous foreign murder into a high-profile case that demanded resolution. Their advocacy ensured that Johnson would not become merely another statistic in cross-border crime. The investigation's turning point came through digital evidence. Ghanaian authorities, collaborating with Nigerian cybercrime specialists, reconstructed Johnson's digital footprint with remarkable precision. His cloud storage contained backed-up WhatsApp conversations, revealing months of communication with Alma. Metadata from shared photos identified locations that contradicted her claims. Several images she had sent as her boutique appeared on multiple Ghanaian business websites, suggesting they were appropriated rather than authentic. Most damning was the discovery of her phone number in connection with 3 previous reports of missing persons, all men who had traveled to Ghana to meet romantic partners. These cases, previously treated as separate incidents, suddenly formed a pattern. Bank records showed systematic withdrawals from Johnson's accounts following his disappearance. ATM camera footage captured clear images of a man using his cards, the same individual introduced as Kwame at the guest house. The digital trail extended to social media, where investigators found multiple profiles using Alma's photos under different names, each targeting men from neighboring countries. These accounts operated with consistent patterns: romantic engagement, invitation to Ghana, then sudden account deletion. As investigators dug deeper, Alma's criminal enterprise emerged with disturbing clarity. Her real name, Abina Owusu, appeared in police records for minor fraud charges 5 years earlier. Since then, she had evolved from small-scale deception to sophisticated criminal operations. Her network included at least 7 core members with specialized roles. Some handled digital communication, maintaining multiple romantic deceptions simultaneously. Others managed logistics for victims' arrivals. The most dangerous members executed the physical attacks. Previous victims who had survived their encounters provided crucial testimony. James Okoro, a Cameroonian businessman who escaped a similar trap the previous year, identified Abina from photographs. "She used a different name with me, Fiona, but that's definitely her. Same voice, same mannerisms." Financial analysis revealed a complex money laundering operation. Stolen funds moved through multiple accounts before being converted to cryptocurrency or used to purchase physical assets like vehicles and property. The operation's sophistication suggested professional criminal expertise rather than opportunistic crime. Most disturbing was the evidence of escalation. Early victims reported robbery and assault, but escaped with their lives. More recent cases involved increasing violence, suggesting the group had become more dangerous over time as they refined their methods and grew confident in their impunity. The investigation ultimately connected Abina's operation to a larger criminal phenomenon known regionally as Sakawa, a Ghanaian term for organized fraud combining technology, deception, and traditional mystical practices. While traditional Sakawa typically focused on online financial scams, Abina's group represented an evolution, bringing victims physically to Ghana rather than limiting operations to digital spaces. This hybrid approach maximized profits while minimizing digital evidence. The Sakawa connection explained the operation's sophistication. These networks shared techniques, resources, and protection through corrupt officials. They operated with established protocols for victim selection, engagement, and exploitation. Investigators discovered ritual objects at a property linked to Kwame, suggesting adherence to Sakawa beliefs that certain ceremonies enhance criminal success. These practices added a cultural dimension to the crimes that complicated prosecution but helped authorities understand the group's internal structure. The Sakawa boys operated across West Africa with loose affiliations rather than rigid hierarchies. Abina's group maintained connections with similar operations in Nigeria, Togo, and Côte d'Ivoire, creating a regional network that shared information about potential victims and evasion techniques. This broader context transformed the investigation from pursuing individual murderers to dismantling a sophisticated criminal enterprise, one that had claimed numerous victims before Johnson and would continue unless definitively stopped. The operation to capture Abina Owusu and her associates required precision timing and international coordination. Ghanaian authorities, working with Interpol and Nigerian police, planned simultaneous raids at multiple locations across Accra. Before dawn on March 17th, tactical teams surrounded 3 properties linked to the group. The primary target, a walled compound in the Spintex Road area, housed Abina and 2 male associates. Officers breached the gates at exactly 5:30 a.m., catching the occupants asleep. "Police, don't move." The commands echoed through the surprisingly luxurious interior as officers secured each room. Abina attempted escape through a bathroom window, but encountered officers positioned at all exit points. She surrendered without further resistance. Throughout the arrest, her expression remained impassive, her composure unbroken even as handcuffs closed around her wrists. The second location yielded Kwame and another associate, along with crucial physical evidence: Johnson's watch, laptop, and identification documents. Most significantly, investigators discovered a detailed ledger containing names, dates, and profit amounts from at least 12 victims. At the third location, officers arrested 2 more group members and uncovered a makeshift studio used to create fraudulent verification videos. The setup included interchangeable backdrops depicting various business environments and a collection of props that could transform the space into different settings, from boutique to office to home. Within hours, authorities had 7 suspects in custody, including all primary members directly involved in Johnson's murder. The coordinated arrests prevented evidence destruction and ensured the network couldn't simply shift operations to new personnel. The trial began 9 months after the arrests, following extensive evidence gathering and witness preparation. Held in Accra's High Court, the proceedings attracted international media attention and packed public galleries daily. Prosecutors presented a methodical case, beginning with Johnson's digital communication with Amma, and ending with forensic evidence from the murder scene. The timeline revealed months of calculated deception culminating in execution. Abina Owusu's defense strategy shifted repeatedly. Initially claiming mistaken identity, she later argued she was merely a paid actress hired to interact with foreign businessmen, unaware of her employer's criminal intentions. When evidence contradicted these claims, she attempted to position herself as a victim of male accomplices who forced her participation. These contradictory defenses collapsed when prosecutors presented footage from Abina's phone, accidentally backed up to cloud storage, showing her instructing group members before Johnson's arrival. The Nigerian has substantial accounts. Don't rush this one. Former victims provided devastating testimony. A businessman from Cameroon identified Abina as the woman who had lured him to Ghana under similar pretenses. She used a different name, but everything else was identical: the romantic buildup, the promise of a special place outside the city. The most shocking courtroom moment came when investigators revealed the group's methodology manual, a digital document outlining steps for effective victim manipulation. Establish trust through consistent communication. Create artificial crises requiring emotional support. Introduce verification characters slowly. Suggest meeting during victim's vulnerability phase. This document, recovered from a password-protected file, demonstrated the clinical calculation behind what had appeared to be genuine romantic connection. Each heartfelt exchange, each personal revelation, had followed a predetermined script designed to manipulate emotions and override caution. After 6 weeks of testimony, the verdict arrived: guilty on all counts. Abina Owusu received life imprisonment without parole for her role as the operation's architect. Kwame and 2 other accomplices directly involved in the murder received identical sentences. 3 peripheral group members received 20-year terms for their supporting roles. The judge's sentencing remarks emphasized the calculated cruelty of the crimes. You exploited fundamental human desires for connection and companionship, transforming hope into a weapon. Your actions demonstrate complete disregard for human dignity. Public reaction transcended borders. In Ghana, demonstrations outside the courthouse celebrated justice while demanding stronger protections against similar operations. In Nigeria, Johnson's hometown held memorial services that doubled as public safety forums. Social media platforms across West Africa filled with discussions about romance scams and safety measures. Hashtags like #JusticeForJohnson and #OnlineDatingSafety trended for weeks. Volunteer groups formed to provide verification services for those planning to meet online connections. The sentences brought closure, but also raised uncomfortable questions about how many similar operations continued undetected. Each new arrest of copycat groups reinforced that the problem extended far beyond one criminal network. The case catalyzed unprecedented cooperation between West African nations. Within months, Ghana, Nigeria, Togo, and Côte d'Ivoire established a joint cybercrime response unit focused specifically on cross-border romance scams and related crimes. This collaboration eliminated previous jurisdictional barriers that had hampered investigations. Standardized evidence-gathering protocols enabled more effective prosecution of crimes spanning multiple countries. Border control points implemented enhanced verification procedures for travelers meeting online contacts. Ghana's parliament passed the Digital Relationship Protection Act, creating specific penalties for romance deception leading to physical harm. Nigeria followed with similar legislation, emphasizing both prevention and prosecution. International organizations provided technical assistance and training for regional law enforcement. Financial intelligence units developed improved methods for tracking suspicious transaction patterns typical of romance scams. Most significantly, these countries established a shared database of known scammers and their methodologies, allowing authorities to identify repeat offenders operating across borders. The system flagged individuals using similar tactics, even when they adopted new identities. This coordinated approach produced immediate results. Within the first year, authorities disrupted 22 criminal networks operating similar schemes, potentially saving hundreds from Johnson's fate. Dating platforms implemented substantive changes following intense public pressure and the threat of regulatory action. Major apps introduced regional verification requirements, mandatory video calls through secure channels, and AI-powered detection systems trained to identify suspicious behavior patterns. Meetup safety protocols became standard features, allowing users to share location data, emergency contacts, and meeting details with the platform before in-person meetings. Automated check-in systems alerted contacts if users failed to confirm their safety at designated intervals. Educational components became mandatory during user registration. Interactive tutorials demonstrated common manipulation tactics and warning signs. Pop-up safety reminders appeared when users discussed traveling or meeting. Platform algorithms received updates to detect conversation patterns matching known scammer techniques. Suspicious accounts faced additional verification requirements, including government ID validation and multi-factor authentication. Dating companies partnered with local authorities in high-risk regions, creating direct reporting channels for suspected scams. This collaboration helped identify emerging tactics before they became widespread. Perhaps most importantly, the industry acknowledged its responsibility in facilitating connections that could lead to harm. The previous hands-off approach transformed into proactive protection, recognizing that convenience could never justify compromised safety. While no system could provide absolute security, these changes significantly increased the barriers for criminals attempting to exploit dating platforms. A bittersweet legacy of Johnson's tragedy. Examining Johnson's case reveals critical warning signs that appear in most online romance scams. Recognizing these patterns could save lives. First, the acceleration of emotional intimacy. Abina systematically created artificial closeness through frequent communication and vulnerability exchanges. While genuine relationships can develop quickly online, manufactured connections often follow predictable escalation patterns designed to create emotional dependence before critical thinking can intervene. Second, the strategic isolation. Abina discouraged Johnson from discussing their relationship with friends or seeking outside perspectives. When his friends expressed concern, she positioned their warnings as obstacles to the relationship rather than valid cautions. Third, the perfect mirroring. Abina carefully crafted her persona to complement Johnson's interests, values, and aspirations. This ideal match phenomenon, where someone appears to share extraordinarily similar goals and perspectives, warrants scrutiny rather than celebration. Fourth, the convenient barriers to verification. Her supposed boutique couldn't be found on Google Street View. Business events always occurred when he couldn't attend. These strategic limitations prevented independent confirmation of her claims. Fifth, the pressure for physical meeting occurred on her timeline. After establishing emotional investment, she controlled when and how they would meet, creating urgency that overrode his natural caution. Sixth, financial and personal information queries increased as the relationship progressed. What began as natural curiosity evolved into pointed questions about his banking arrangements and travel insurance. Most tragically, Johnson dismissed these warning signs because they emerged gradually. Like temperature changes too subtle to notice until extreme, these red flags accumulated below his awareness threshold until the danger became immediate and inescapable. Dr. Eleanor Matthews, cybercrime psychologist at University College London, identifies sophisticated manipulation as the foundation of effective romance scams. These criminals exploit fundamental human needs for connection and validation. They create idealized personas specifically designed to appeal to target demographics. Matthews explains that scammers select victims through careful screening. They look for specific vulnerability markers in profiles and early conversations. Recent loss, isolation from family, career success paired with romantic disappointment. They tailor approaches accordingly. Criminal profiler Michael Washington notes that romance scammers display traits associated with antisocial personality disorder. They view victims as objects rather than people. This emotional detachment enables them to maintain deceptions over extended periods without experiencing guilt. The most dangerous evolution, according to Interpol analyst Juliette Renoir, is the shift from purely financial motivation to hybrid crimes. Traditional romance scams focused on extracting money remotely. This new model, bringing victims to physical locations, represents significant escalation. It combines digital deception with conventional violent crime. Digital forensics specialist Tariq Hassan emphasizes the technological sophistication. These aren't amateur operations. They employ advanced techniques to create convincing digital footprints, backdated social media posts, manipulated verification photos, even deep-fake technology for video calls in some cases. All experts agree on one critical point. Romance scammers succeed because victims want to believe. Human desire for connection can override protective skepticism, particularly when scammers expertly exploit this psychological vulnerability. Implementing these concrete safety measures can significantly reduce risks when dating online. 1. Verify through multiple channels. Cross-reference information across platforms. Legitimate people generally have consistent digital footprints across multiple sites. Search images through reverse image search engines to confirm authenticity. 2. Insist on video verification. Regular, spontaneous video calls help confirm identity. Request specific actions during calls, holding up 3 fingers, touching an ear, to prevent pre-recorded footage use. 3. Delay sharing sensitive information. Financial details, home address, workplace specifics, and family information should remain private until trust is thoroughly established through in-person meetings. 4. Research before meeting. Investigate mentioned workplaces, educational history, and professional associations. Legitimate claims typically have verifiable elements. 5. First meetings require strict protocols. Meet only in public locations with high visibility. Share meeting details with multiple trusted contacts. Arrange check-in calls during the meeting. Use your transportation, and never change locations without notifying your safety contacts. 6. Trust hesitation. If something feels wrong, acknowledge that instinct. Psychological research confirms that subconscious processing often detects inconsistencies before conscious awareness. 7. Implement the friend test. Introduce online connections to friends via video call before meeting in person. Outside perspectives often notice concerning behaviors that emotional investment might obscure. 8. Create verification questions. Develop questions based on previously shared information. Inconsistent answers may indicate fabricated background stories. These protocols aren't about paranoia. They're about establishing appropriate boundaries until genuine trust develops naturally through consistent, verifiable behavior. The aftermath of romance scam murders extends far beyond the victim. Families experience complex trauma combining grief, guilt, and often public judgment. I replay our last conversation constantly, Johnson shared during an advocacy event. I warned him, but not forcefully enough. That guilt never disappears. This self-blame represents a common response among families. The belief that they could have prevented the tragedy by intervening more aggressively creates lasting psychological wounds. Many families also confront painful public reactions questioning the victim's judgment. Comments like, "How could anyone fall for that?" compound grief with shame and defensive anger. Mental health professionals working with these families report post-traumatic stress symptoms, complicated grief responses, and profound changes in worldview. Family members often develop extreme caution regarding digital interactions, sometimes extending to pathological distrust. Recovery requires specialized therapeutic approaches addressing both traumatic loss and the unique aspects of deception-related crimes. Support groups connecting families who have experienced similar tragedies provide particularly effective healing environments by normalizing complex emotional responses and reducing isolation. The Johnson family channeled their pain into prevention work, establishing a foundation providing education about online dating safety, transforming personal tragedy into protection for others. Beyond individual cases, romance scams reflect significant social challenges at the intersection of technology, human connection, and criminal opportunity. These crimes exploit the growing isolation in modern societies. As traditional community connections weaken, online relationships fill crucial social needs, creating new vulnerabilities criminals readily exploit. The phenomenon also reveals how technology simultaneously connects and disconnects us. Digital platforms create unprecedented opportunities for meaningful relationships across distances while removing protective elements of physical community. The friend who might quietly warn about concerning behavior, the family member who might notice inconsistencies. Economic disparities fuel these crimes in regions with limited legitimate opportunities. Well-organized criminal networks offer financial incentives that turn manipulation skills into marketable assets. Law enforcement faces nearly impossible challenges monitoring private communications across international boundaries, creating low-risk, high-reward criminal opportunities. The decentralized nature of these operations makes them particularly resistant to traditional policing approaches. As societies increasingly rely on digital connections for fundamental human needs, these vulnerabilities will likely grow without coordinated technological, educational, and legal responses addressing root causes rather than symptoms. If this story has impacted you, please join our community dedicated to sharing vital safety information. Hit the subscribe button to receive new videos exploring cases with crucial life lessons. This channel exists to prevent tragedies through education, not just document them. Your subscription directly supports our research and production of content that could save lives. I'm particularly interested in your experiences with online relationships. Have you noticed any of the warning signs we discussed? What verification steps do you take before meeting online connections? Your insights might help others recognize dangerous situations. Share this video with someone navigating online relationships. A simple conversation about safety protocols could make all the difference. Today, a small memorial garden stands in Lagos where Johnson once mentored young entrepreneurs. His family transformed grief into purpose by establishing the Johnson Foundation for Online Safety, which has educated thousands of young Nigerians about digital relationships. His business continues under his sister's leadership, serving the small enterprises he believed in supporting. Each year on his birthday, the foundation hosts a technology summit connecting African innovators, fulfilling his vision of continental collaboration. He was more than a victim, his father says. He was a son, a brother, a visionary whose plans for Africa's digital future deserved fulfillment. We ensure his name remains associated with protection and possibility, not just tragedy. Through these efforts, Johnson's legacy endures not as a cautionary tale, but as a catalyst for necessary change. Awareness remains our strongest defense against evolving deception tactics. Technology creates new vulnerabilities as quickly as it builds safeguards against existing threats. Protecting yourself requires consistent vigilance without surrendering the genuine connections technology enables. Verify before trusting. Meet in public spaces before private ones. Share plans with friends. Trust instincts when they signal concern. Remember that legitimate relationships withstand reasonable caution. Anyone genuinely interested in your well-being will respect boundaries established for safety. The digital world operates without the natural protective barriers of physical communities. We must consciously create these barriers ourselves, establishing verification checkpoints that would happen naturally in traditional relationship development. This vigilance isn't paranoia. It's necessary adaptation to environments where identity can be manufactured and proximity no longer guarantees authenticity. Despite these dangers, countless authentic relationships begin online every day. People find genuine love, meaningful friendships, and valuable professional connections through digital platforms. The solution isn't withdrawal from online spaces, but rather thoughtful engagement with appropriate boundaries. Dating apps, social media, and professional networks remain valuable tools for connection when approached with informed caution. Mary Chun, who met her husband through a dating app 5 years ago, shares, "We progress slowly. Video calls before meeting. Public coffee shops before dinner dates. Friends introduced early in the relationship. These precautions didn't diminish our connection. They created safety that allowed genuine intimacy to develop." The technology that enables deception also creates unprecedented opportunities for meaningful connection across distances and differences that once separated compatible people. With proper safeguards, these connections can safely enrich our lives in ways previous generations couldn't imagine. As our lives increasingly blend digital and physical realities, where do we draw the line between healthy caution and paralyzing fear? How do we remain open to genuine connection while protecting ourselves from those who weaponize our fundamental human need for companionship? Perhaps the answer lies not in technology, but in remembering those authentic relationships, regardless of how they begin, develop at a pace that allows for verification, respects boundaries, and values safety.